Everyone, well, welcome to this one of the lovely sessions we've got this afternoon. My name's Adam Murray. I am the head of community empowerment at the RSPB, to work across all 4 countries. And we're here to be with you this afternoon to talk about working with and for communities. And yeah, for those of you in the initial session that's just started this afternoon, very much around when we're looking at individual stakeholders and how we can help people take action for nature. I think that amazing stat of needing to hit that 1 in 4 people taking meaningful action for nature and the climate emergency, and how we go about doing that. So our team is very small at the RSPB and very new. We've only been going for about 18 months, but we're very much here to have a sort of wider discussion with you all. So yeah, I'm Adam, nice to meet you. I'm going to hand over to Emma. I'm going to start sharing some slides while we do that. So bear with me as I do that. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. And as I've just popped in the chat, if you have any questions at all, please do put them in the Q&A section on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will endeavour to try and answer questions. So if you see us, either of us typing hurriedly, that is us responding to what we can. So yes, my name's Emma Burt. I am the Community Empowerment Development Manager for the RSPB. I work alongside Adam in a tiny team, as he stated. Just a few housekeeping rules. Apologies that I'm not looking at my screen. I have 2, so bear with me. Just because we're coming from all over across the country, different homes, etc. But on this platform, we actually can't see you, as you know, so bear with us a little there. There will be an opportunity to actually bring some of you in, as we're going to be having discussion sessions, as part of this presentation in the second half, so in about 20 minutes or so. And if you would like to be a part of that discussion, which we would love for you to do, to share your ideas, there is a big blue button apparently on the side of your screen, and Stu, who is very, very kindly, Stuart, who's looking after us today from the Natural History Consortium, will help, there he is waving, will help bring you across. So yes, that is housekeeping. And just a few words on the spirit of today's session, folks. So there are absolutely no right or wrong answers when we do start to discuss. No such thing as a bad idea. Please do feel that whatever experience you have, it's very important. It's always going to be important, and do feel free to contribute. All experiences in this space are valid and all voices are equal during this session. So we know working with communities isn't always easy for those of you who do, but we would love to just go through what we're doing currently at the moment as part of this presentation. And final thing to say is that we would love to be informed and guided by you in our discussion sessions, because it's just a really interesting time and space for us. So first of all, we thought we'd just quickly check in with you all, because we always do, for those who missed our amazing lunch session next time. But yes, hello from the Community Empowerment team. Hopefully you can all see this slide. We just wanted to ask you a quick question. What is your favourite, closest green or blue space? If you can pop your answers into the chat, that would be fantastic. As I said, anything and everything, we'd love to hear from you. So please do feel free, and we'll just quickly have a little look. Andy's garden, absolutely. I can hear someone mowing in the background, so I'll have to shut my windows soon. All the West Pennine Moors, amazing. Oh, quite a few people from Bristol. This makes sense. The estuary I can see from my window. Amy, you lucky. New Forest, Snuff Mills. I mean, I don't know what that is, but that sounds fabulous. Rutland Water, only 20 minutes from Rutland Water at the moment, so that's amazing. And Rodborough Common I've been to. That's my old stomping ground. Amazing, guys. Oh, this is lovely. So it's just really nice to see, and it can be your blue spaces as well. And if you feel comfortable enough to tell us why you really, really love these spaces, please do feel free to share. Adam, I don't know whether you have any thoughts on these.
Yeah, love them. And we quite often ask this question when we talk to people about communities, because quite often communities can be either very much the neighbourhood you live in. They can also be the wider area that you go and spend if you are lucky enough to have any green or blue space nearby. Still kicking off in Norwich, apologies. But also, it's not only that, it's also people who are interested around a particular subject as well, such as online communities around a particular subject. So we always quite like to sort of get asked that question first. But a bit of background around why we're here today. So first of all, thanks to Savita and the team at Natural History Consortium for inviting us along. And we were asked to come along to, like I said at the beginning, kind of start exploring that idea of how UK cities and regions are actually engaging communities, more specifically, in addressing the ecological and climate emergency. Back in January, we started off a series of workshops with lots of different organisations, not only in the environmental sector, but also across other sectors where they're working with communities, and asking ourselves this particular question, which is how might we actually work together to help and empower communities to take action for the nature and climate emergencies. And by asking that question, it really was asking around that kind of shift in the approach in a much more kind of empowerment space. So how can we help communities unlock that amazing power that they've got to start taking action, either as individuals or as actually wider communities? So that was the question we asked. And one of the main things that came out to begin with was saying that there's a real need to kind of having like a one-stop shop for all these different organizations around producing something that has all the sort of best of the best, great examples and practical tips around how to work with communities. So this idea of a sort of collective community action playbook came about. Now, when we talk about a playbook, what is a playbook? I'm not sporting in the slightest, but for those of you who know, a playbook is essentially like a sort of a collection of your strategies and your best plays or approaches to carrying out your work. The reason why this came out was because we were well aware that there's lots of absolute gems of stuff, particularly across the internet and different organizations, of experience and case studies and resources, but they're kind of dispersed all over the internet, particularly when you step outside of the environmental sector. So it's a way of kind of putting those all together in one particular place. Now, we should also say that this is not thinking that we're doing anything new, because there's absolutely amazing stuff out there that we kind of want to look at. We don't want to be reinventing the wheel. Yeah, if any of you have ever read this absolutely brilliant book by Austin Kleon, which is called How to Steal Like an Artist, this is very much of the ethos of what we're going for, which is actually finding out what is already out there and bringing it all together, and across the sector, really sort of highlighting some of the great examples and resources of how to work with and for communities and helping them take action for the nature and climate emergency. So just to be really clear, so this playbook and the sort of need for this playbook is for any organization who is working with and for communities where they want to take action that is relevant to them related to the nature and climate emergency. So it's very much in that, how do you help communities take action that is relevant to them in their patch, in their own way? So any organization, and so if this sounds like you out there, then basically we want to hear from you, because we'd love to hear your voice being heard as we put this playbook together. So whose is the playbook? Well, I know that Emma and I are from the RSPB, but this is definitely not a playbook that is owned by one particular organization. We want to make sure that any organization, however big or small, feels as though that they can actually contribute towards this, and feel as though that their ideas and examples, however big or small, are relevant and can be showcased in the playbook. And this is just another really good example of how this has been done elsewhere in a very sort of collective approach to doing it. And this is the impact guide. And as you can see, there's some different logos of different organizations that help put this together as a way of a sort of field guide to doing filming. So another great example. This is very much of the ethos of what we're wanting to do when we put the playbook together. And so far, we've got some great different organisations, big and small, who've been working with and through and for communities. And we'd love to be able to get many more examples from different organisations in here, so we feel as though we can all build this playbook together. So big thank you to those guys. They've actually been with us from day one when we started this conversation. And like I said, hopefully some of you listening to this as well would like to get involved as we pull this together. So this is where we started trying to unpick this in the session that after January, we had another session back in last month in May. And this is when we started trying to tease out exactly what was actually going to be in this playbook. And three main things came out initially. First was all the idea of like, what were our guiding themes? Kind of the approach that every way, depending on how big or small your organization is, that we're sort of rooted in our sort of ways of doing things. Then not just the theory, cutting to the chase and actually some practical tips of what to actually do when you want to work and empower communities to take action. And then stories of action. So again, examples of those practical tips being put into place as well. And as you can see, we started having that conversation around what that then looks like and whether this is like a co-designed website, free to use with, you know, amazing sort of resources for people to use. And very much, it's like we said, like a one-stop shop for everyone to sort of share far and wide. So we're going to now dig into a few of those three different areas, and where we started as a sort of collective group of us, starting to look at what initially some of those guiding themes could be. So I'm now going to pass over to Emma to talk through these. Emma, over to you.
There's a very interesting question for you, Adam, which I know you're going to really love in the Q&A. Very Adam-esque. Thank you, Adam. So yes, after our January workshop, as Adam was saying, we started to pull out insights from the session to inform an initial list, as you can see on this slide, of guiding for the playbook regarding ways of working with and for communities. And with these 6 kind of initial themes that came out of the discussion, we then wanted to cross-reference these with organisations across the UK and their principles, ways of working, approach, etc. And we're going to take you through a few of those in the next few slides, because we wanted to essentially see what gaps there were that we could potentially address and fill. Thank you, Adam.
Sorry, I'm multitasking badly. Hang on a tick.
It's all right. We've got...
There we go.
The two things, it's all good, thank you. So yes, as we've said before, folks, we're not starting completely from scratch. There are some amazing examples all across the UK of similar organisations and other organisations across sectors actually that are working alongside environmental sectors like ourselves, such as these guys, community organisers, who I'm sure loads of you have heard of. They've got a fantastic principles of practice, as you can see outlined on this slide. So that's one that's really inspired us. Thanks, Adam. And this is another fantastic group, Eden Project Communities, which sits alongside Eden Project's main channels and activities. And this is their fantastic theory of play designed and built on approach, which is something that they use when essentially starting any conversations, regardless of its context. It's just fantastic being able to simple and yet again another way of looking at how you can talk to, start conversations with, and build, co-create and co-participate with communities. So we wanted to take all of this amazing learning and insight and combine it to provide something that was free for all, that allowed for a more consistent, cohesive and supported approach across the sectors, in order that the many discussions that do take place within spaces such as this, as the amazing Communicate conference, etc., can be put into a space that drives action from people like yourselves and ourselves, hoping to engage with communities across the country. Thank you, Adam. So in May, we actually reconvened this amazing community action group, consisting of all of the people that we've highlighted to date and a whole list of others. We've got 40 organisations involved at the present time, to ask them what was good, as you can see on the slide, what was missing and what was needed from the initial themes. And we got fantastic feedback from the session, with considerations, challenges and ideas all being truly diverse and insightful due to the range of organisations that actually take part in this group. Thanks, Adam. And here they are. These are the thoughts collated together, 10 themes, 10 guiding themes that have been co-created, which is just through such a lovely process, which then will lead nicely into our practical tips for implementing these approaches into the work that we do as a big group, as a collective across the nation. Thanks, Adam.
Okie doke. So yeah, like we said, though, going from those sort of wider themes of sort of ways of working, which should really work regardless of how big your organisation, whether you're a local authority, it should work across the board. But then we wanted to, the main bit of feedback was just like, give us some examples of what's the sort of really good practical tips for working through communities. And initial desk research came up with a whole series of really sort of great stuff, which we put through these different categories. So everything from working with communities to design a collective vision, all the way through to the exciting stuff around helping communities understand what the sort of legal and risk requirements are for them delivering their actions on the ground, and kind of everything in between, such as finding your tribe, so helping communities find like-minded people to come together, all the way through to sort of celebrating success and how to go about doing that, which best piece of advice is generally involve food, and free food is always a good tip. So that was the initial sort of like desk research. So again, we put this to our group back in our May workshop, and we're asking them essentially, have you got any examples that kind of cover off these different practical advice tips, and or is there anything missing that we haven't come across? And are there any specific resources that we can direct people to that is already out there, regardless of whether it's from a different sector? And that again, yeah, we can steal with pride and send people and showcase some of the great stuff that's already out there. So with that in mind, we did come up with some other great examples. So some of you might have used these in the past. We spoke to the team at the National Lottery, and yeah, hopefully you would have come across this in the past. And this is the community planning toolkit that's out there, with some really sort of practical top tips around how to convene communities together and start working with communities. So, and that's from obviously all the lessons learned that the lottery have had through all the many different community projects that they've got. And I can tell from being part of a community group myself here in Norwich, the lovely Norwich City Council Community Enabling Team signposted me to this resource when I first started up our community group. It's actually based in Brighton, so some of you might have known this, but again, it's a resource that's really useful for any group setting up. So again, if you're a small organisation that want to help and get a request from an individual wanting to set up their own community group, then you can start. We can start having these sort of resources that we can signpost people to. Then, last but not least, again, our friends over at the Eden Project Communities have started over the last sort of few years putting together different examples of different resources for communities themselves. And again, the Eden Project are great because they're working directly with those community leaders or organisers taking action. So again, if you're an organisation that wants to signpost your communities to some top tips, here are some others as well. But what I would say is that the conversation we had last month was really useful because it started to also identify some gaps that are out there, which we could actually start across the board filling up with some potentially new resources if they're not already available. So that takes us from the guiding themes through to those practical advice and top tips, through to the last sort of area that came out, which was the area around the examples of stories of action that's already out there. Sorry, my light's just gone off. Yeah, that's kind of like the last piece in the puzzle, really. And hopefully you're all well aware, and that, you know, if you just have to look to the power of words and stories that we've mentioned through storytelling at the Communicate conferences over the years, it's very, very powerful indeed. And I always love looking to the example of the Humans of New York. For those of you who've seen it on Instagram and other sort of social platforms, and they've actually produced a book as well. And this is like real life stories, real life people, and very simple sort of portrait photographs and simple sort of stories of everyday life. So again, we started looking at what are the different stories out there that we want to share with people. And Emma, over to you to give a bit of a flavour of some of the stuff we've already come up with.
Thanks, Adam, and I've just put the link to the Humans of New York for you folks in the chat bar. So yes, over the last 6 months, we have been magpies, excuse the bird reference, so kind of just collecting a whole range of amazing stories from across the 4 countries. Here are just a few that are listed here. And our favourite is one that I'll very quickly just go over, is the Garden Alley in Belfast. If you've not had a look, Google it, take it through. I'll try and pop a little link in there. It's absolutely beautiful. Essentially, it was a community that had this alleyway that joined all of their houses, but it was underused, it was underloved. It just wasn't a very nice space. The local residents didn't feel safe. So yeah, but what they did was, this gentleman on the right, in the photo that you can see on the slide, he decided one day that he wanted to make a change for himself and his community. So he brought a whole load of the local residents together, and they started to clean it up and provide green space, as little or as much as each person and individual could provide. Adam's just popped a link in, have a little look. It just became this incredible community, safe, loved space that they now use all the time, and it's actually just become for Belfast a bit of a place to go and see. So it's just one really great example of how a couple of individuals can have such impact on nature and on their communities. And the lovely thing about stories is that anyone can tell them, which is wonderful. So when we asked our collective last month what stories they had, there were so many other examples that we'd never come across. Projects, organisations, individuals doing great things for nature and climate change. And I'm just going to pass back to Adam to actually tell us a bit about Access College, who are a group that we're working with currently.
Yeah, so for those of you, I don't know if you're aware, in England specifically, Access College have got up to, I think, 7 different campuses across England for 16 to 24-year-olds, from everything from gaming through to design and illustration and music. And we're actually working with them at the moment with over 2,000 plus students around using their own creativity to inspire others to take action for the nature and climate emergency. And that's just another example of sort of reaching out to different audiences and engaging people with the stuff that is relevant to them through creativity. So just another example of doing things slightly differently. Over to you, Emma.
Fab, thank you, Adam. So guys, we have about 15 minutes before we need to start to wrap up, and we'd love to hear from you. So it is over to you, essentially. We have all of you here. This is a fantastic opportunity for us, and we'd love to invite you to take part in this collective effort. So within the framework of the question on the slide that we provided in them as a collective, we'd love to hear from you and gain your insight. So we're just going to go through a series of questions. We'll have about 5 minutes per question. And like I said before, feel free to pop stuff in the chat. But for anyone that feels comfortable enough to discuss this, please do press the big blue button, and Stu will very kindly let you into the space so that we can have a quick chat. So the first question, folks, is what else do we need in the playbook? We're aware that you've had a very flash tour, but there may be something that just jumps to mind or something that you'd like to elaborate on. Like I say, feel free to pop stuff in the chat and press the blue button in your own time. So what else do we need in the playbook? What else could we build on? Or is there anything any examples that you feel we could learn from? Are you part of a community group, etc.? All of the above. Adam, any thoughts to add to that? Ooh.
This is where we hope our invisible audience comes out of the shadows.
Yeah. So what else do we need? Community orchards. Oh, love community orchards. There's the fantastic orchard project and Semble that are doing amazing stuff. Oh, Victoria, you've joined us.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. This is really relevant to me because I've just started a community fire watch scheme in Marsden where we've had a few moorland fires recently. At the moment, I'm trying to kind of give it back to the community to lead it themselves. So it's kind of, how do I kind of go from, okay, so I've got a few key people of about, say, 10 who will dedicatedly go out and do their patrols, but how do I sort of take it to the next level? I'm guessing I'm thinking about things like insurance and stuff. Like, it is a community organization. It's not a national trust organization, but I'm just kind of helping them set it up. So yeah, any kind of taking that next step from the initial interest and capitalizing on it would be really helpful.
Yeah. And that sits really nicely. Thank you, Victoria. That's a great example. And yeah, that's one of the things that's come out around finding your tribe. Very much the idea of how you actually reach out and find more, because there's always just going to be a few advocates who are very loud and proud and shouting about the importance of it. Yeah, how you then take it to the next level. Yeah, so we can add that into the mix as well under those practical tips.
Just got a couple of questions, Adam, in the side. So could you just flash up what's in the playbook so far again, please, for us?
Now you're challenging me. Hang on a minute.
You can just summarise if you'd like.
Yeah.
Bear with us, Hannah. And I'm just going to be writing notes, folks, and keeping. So thank you so much to everyone who's contributed so far. This is lovely. Please show the playbook again. Bear with us, folks. Technical difficulties. No worries, Hannah. Thank you. So
I guess the first thing is, yeah, generally, are we missing anything when we start looking at those three main things? So first of all, missing from the guiding themes, practical tips and stories of action. So that's the first sort of main question. So one of the things that did come up is definitions, because there's lots of jargon around. So actually having a glossary of terms would be quite useful. So is there anything else in there?
And I think that touches, sorry, Adam, on Claire's question of who is the community. We're going to include that in our definitions, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. Then, yeah, we could then dig into more detail, that idea of guiding themes. So yeah, we can, yeah, it'd be good to get test these and see if there's anything missing on the guiding themes. But I think our main question at this stage is going back to this one is, as well as the guiding themes, practical tips and stories of action, is there anything that is missing at the moment from that? And I think for Simon, whose question was around organising parties and celebrating success so that people see themselves and their communities as part of the movement, that would be also a part of our practical tips, wouldn't it, Adam? A kind of bingo of amazing things that we can do. Yeah, absolutely. Hello, Simon, first of all, long time no see. Yeah, that's very much part of that celebratory bit that came out in the practical top tips. And for any of you that were part of the big lunch with the Easing Project over the weekend, that's a good example of getting people together around food and celebrating. Actually feeling as though a lot of people don't even consider themselves volunteers, community organisers. They just feel as though they're good neighbours trying to do the right thing. So yeah, absolutely. So Hannah is asking, what about evaluation? Is that included?
as it can be very difficult and time consuming. Absolutely, Hannah. We're both very aware of that, aren't we, Adam? So yes, I think we're hoping, aren't we, Adam, to create a supportive framework for every stage of those community organisers.
Exactly, and we do have some good examples in there already. And for that, one example I'll share with you, I don't know if it's like product placement, but the lovely people at Greedy Squirrel, if you go to their website, and they've got evaluation top trumps. So this is on my desk at all times, gives you loads of different really cool ideas of how to do evaluation, and you can do real qualitative stuff or quantitative stuff. And if you don't know that, there's also, if you go and have a look at Candy Chang, she does some really great sort of engaging work. But actually, if you go to that community planning website by the lottery, there's some really lovely, engaging, sort of fun evaluation examples in there. But yeah,
definitely mix. I think we're possibly going to have to move to the next question, Adam, just looking at the time and making sure. But there's some love, just to come back on a few of the questions, absolutely around funding, possibilities, celebrations. We completely recognise that every green space and community are different, and how they interact is very different. And that's where Adam's kind of emphasis on relevancy and approach is really, really crucial. Any advice on communities working with businesses and local authorities as part of their climate emergency targets? We can provide that. The RSPB is working on that as we speak. Right, sorry folks, we will have to move on, I'm afraid, but we will do our best to make a note of all of these questions and thoughts. Thank you so much. Have we got the right people on the bus? This is the second question. Adam, over to you.
Okie doke. So yeah, like we shared, this started off as a conversation between about 10 different organisations, all working with communities in one way or another. We've now, from January through to last month, we're now up to about 40 different organisations, big, small, all different shapes and sizes. So I guess the question over to you all is, who else do we need to be in this conversation to make sure that we get a really broad mix of relevant resources and knowledge and expertise and worries and concerns and kind of difficulties that people are having. So yeah, over to you to add it in the chat. If you are interested as part of your organisation to get on the fun bus that is the community action work that we're doing as a wider group, then do get in touch. But over to you, and anyone who wants to come onto the stage, as it were, do press the big blue button.
And to start us off, we've got Helen. Absolutely, one of the people that comes along to the workshop is a youth person, and we have to do an equality impact assessment and have that as an approach. Absolutely, aren't we, Adam? We're very much looking at EDI as a core theme in this work. Citizens, parish, district, regional bodies, absolutely, and that touches on your point, Amy, around working with local authorities, which is really, really imperative for communities. Best methods to engage those that don't use or have difficulties accessing green space. Yeah, absolutely. I've been talking to some disability organisations as well. We're going to see if we can try and get those kind of people involved that work at getting people with less access through whatever means involved. Science centres, expertise in communicating complex ideas to a wide range of public audiences. We're actually talking, aren't we, Adam, with the British Science Association as well. They are invited along to that, and we're trying to ensure that we have a really kind of diverse arts, heritage, culture, sport, etc. Is there anyone else that would like to come in and just expand on one of their ideas? Lovely to see faces. Are any do you mean non-for-profit organisations? Sorry, Sam, or sorry, for-profit organisations involved? I wasn't reading that. Adam?
Oh, good question. We haven't at the moment. I think that's a really good shout. And I went along to a workshop the other day where we had people from this is not just because I'm in Norwich, but Aviva and their community work, and actually working with businesses who do want to work with their local communities. So I think that's a really good shout, actually, is bringing in those businesses that want to be working with communities. So I think that's a really good addition. Thank you.
And we were thinking, weren't we, Adam, when we first had these conversations, especially with Savita and the Communicate set, was one of how do we expand these ways of working to people, like you say, like local businesses or within the financial sector, for etc., like sectors that don't necessarily always have access to frameworks such as this. It would be interesting to know, this is from Mara, how you engage with some of the perhaps more disruptive activist groups like Extinction Rebellion. Ooh, that's an intriguing question. I think that's probably something we'd probably learn as we go along, wouldn't we, Adam? And from all the experience of other parties. Yeah,
absolutely. And actually, using Extinction of Rebellion and as an example, that they have got that approach of, like, you come up with a series of principles that people would be adhering to. And then people are kind of empowered to go off and do their relevant actions. So it's a similar sort of thing that we're talking about with this, us as a wider group, about how we go about doing that. So that's a good shout.
And Richard, Adam has a lovely point. Link to sustainable development goals to identify sector gaps and increase relevance.
Yeah, I like it.
And yes, landowners. We absolutely here at the RSPB, we are landowners and farmers. Yep, we've got all of those ticked, as well as a whole load of other organisations. People's Assembly. Anyone else want to just come in and maybe comment on anything we've said? Or don't worry if you're a little bit scared of showing your face, but it's always nice.
We're a friendly bunch, really.
Yeah. 9 times out of 10. Schools has come up as well. We've got a fantastic internal team that look at schools as well. Sam, way, lovely to see you. Oh, they're all coming through. It's lovely. Hi.
I guess just with that for-profit organisations involved, I think it's always tricky, because especially stuff like this, when you think of the private sector, you think you sort of steer clear, dodgy sort of thing. But I think now, like, all parties involved, or all parties in general, need to be involved in solving stuff like this. So I think that's why they need to be involved as well, I guess.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the setup for the whole of today's session and that comment, which is, we've all been trying to save the planet for decades. It's not happening. So we need to be doing things differently. And the only way we can be doing things differently is, first of all, empower other people to take action, not just the keynote ones. And not only that, but to be discussing this sort of stuff outside of your own little bubble. Because if we don't do that, we're just in a world of echo chambers and our little silos. I'll wholeheartedly agree.
The responsibility just gets passed on to others, isn't it? It's either consumers or whatever. Everyone needs to change their habits, and then on the other hand, it's the big corporations that need to do stuff for that to be happening. Where everyone needs to be doing something.
Yeah, exactly. Good shout.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
That's right.
Amy.
Hi everyone. It's kind of building on what Sam was saying. So I've been working with big businesses and local authorities for quite a few years now, and I'm actually wanting to transition to work more with communities, because I felt that big businesses had the power and influence, but actually they will do what their customers tell them they want them to do. So it's kind of an aspect of a two-way thing. So a lot of landowners are actually multinational corporations and hedge funds and very, very rich people who own most of the land. So even in a city where you're trying to incorporate more nature, even if it looks like it's partly owned by the council, it's usually not. It's usually some kind of private development. And so you kind of need to bring them on board in order to even just get some nice plant plots to increase biodiversity in some way. So I find that really interesting / frustrating. And also, how do you kind of empower citizens to push for the companies that they buy stuff from to do more? And if you are working more closely with kind of community action, then you get somewhat faceless corporate entities, you get to see them as a community, and they are just individuals, and some of them live in the communities that they want to change. So I think it's really important to include both those.
That's so lovely, Amy. That kind of touches, doesn't it, Adam, on what we always say, which is if we're trying to encourage and support and enhance communities, we also need to see ourselves as a community internally at the RSPB. We need to see the sector as a community, etc., etc. So we can have that one core principle, if nothing else, then that's lovely. Adam, did you want to have any final thoughts? Then we're going to have to let people go.
Yeah, I thank you, both of you. That's great. We do have one actually Q&A, which is around social science and behaviour change. I geek out on this sort of stuff all the time, so I'm always trying to weave this sort of stuff into it, and obviously it links into the evaluation as well. So having a clear understanding of your theory of change about how you work with communities, but also how the communities do their own stuff, I think is key. So I'm always a big advocate for that side of stuff, and we're lucky enough to have links into we've got social scientists within our organisation, but there's lots of other great work going on out there as well. So I thought we'd just sort of finish up. I know we're kind of over and you need to dash over to your next session, so I just wanted to say we want to carry on this conversation. So if you are interested and you do want to keep the conversation flowing, then please do get hold of us we'll pop it in the chat, community@rspb.org.uk. I can see Emma typing away. There we go. Give us an email and let's keep it going. So look forward to hearing you. Thank you for your time, and we'll enjoy your next sessions for the rest of the afternoon. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys, and thank you to everyone who came on screen and for all of your insight and inputs on the chat. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.